Hello, friends. This is Jared with Launch Terre Haute, and I'm sitting here with Ethan Page, a local serial entrepreneur. Among his ventures, we've got Crossroads Events and Timing, Marsupial Athletics, Farm Fresh, Jam LLC, and what we're going to be talking about most today, the local barcade, Barbotics. Recently, Barbotics celebrated their first anniversary, their birthday, and so we're going to talk a little bit about what it is to be a serial entrepreneur. And how crazy do you have to be to open a barcade during a global pandemic? So we'll go ahead and get right into it, Ethan. As we say here, you're a serial entrepreneur. Where does that come from? What drives you to start all these businesses and ventures?
That's an excellent question. I think it stems from a few different areas or a few different places and stuff like that. And one, I grew up in a family-owned business. So my grandparents, way back in the day, like the 70s, they started grocery stores, Page's Groceries. So I've kind of always, probably violating a lot of child labor laws here, but I was put to work when I was like 5 or 6 years old. So I was, of course at that time, it's not like, doing crazy stuff, but I was in the store, stocking shelves, facing stuff up,
driving the forklift.
Yeah, driving the forklift, crushing the boxes. Yeah. But I had always been involved in that. So I'd always been involved around a family business forever. So, and my dad had kind of muddled in a few things as well. My grandparents really just did the grocery stores, but my dad, went down a couple different ventures, which I just kind of got to see happen and worked in it as a kid. So my dad opened the racing barn with a partner at one point, which was a go-kart racing place with really fast go-karts in Terre Haute. And it was on the north side, and we would work that and pull everyone out of the gutters when they ran their go-karts in and stuff like that. So I think part of it was kind of growing up in that and seeing, I feel like it was just kind of ingrained into me a little bit, to kind of capture what you want to do or go after what you want to do and work really hard to get what your idea is. So I think I had that passed down to me from both my parents, because I don't want to brag, but I think my mom and dad are probably some of the hardest workers I've ever met in my entire life. Same with my grandparents, same with a lot of people in my family. So I think that was kind of ingrained with me and growing up in that atmosphere. And on top of that, when I was going to college and I actually, growing up, I did not want to do any of that, because I think you also see from the other side the difficulties of a family business, and my family's businesses, it was all the family all the time. And my parents have a lot of siblings and stuff like that, and they're all involved, and you kind of see the good, the bad, and the ugly of that, right? And I really didn't want anything to do with it. So when I went to college, I had always really been passionate about kind of protecting people and law enforcement. Mm-hmm. So I actually originally went to college and did my freshman year at Ball State studying forensic criminology. But I also took some business classes, because I was like, hey, the family business, they're struggling, how can I help and help my family at the same time of going for criminology? And I took all these business classes and computer classes and stuff like that, and I did really well, and I actually really, really enjoyed it. And I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it. I really didn't think I would enjoy it as much. And my criminology professors were amazing, but I guess I kind of felt that family draw back to business a little bit. And I ended up transferring after my freshman year from Ball State to IU because of the Kelley School of Business, and they're pretty dang good. Sure. So I transferred there, and I was going for a dual degree, but more with a focus on business than criminology. And then when I was a senior, I was like, man, I think I want something from my own. Something's not very appealing at starting from the very bottom, which you do as an entrepreneur anyways, and it's a lot harder, but I didn't realize that. Sure. But I was like, man, I feel like I have all these great ideas, and I know I have excellent work ethic and everything else like that. And I don't know if I want to spend a long time climbing a corporate ladder or a ladder within an organization when I can just start right now. And The problem with that I found is that it is a hard, lonely path at the very beginning for a long time, especially when you are, fresh out of college and don't know what you're doing. So, in retrospect, I don't know if I would have gone down that path, but I'm glad I am. So that's kind of like, I guess, my story about where it kind of started and kind of where it developed. I formed, really, I'd say it launched for me in college. I did an internship with Textbook Painting. So they're like the companies that teach you how to run your own business, and you basically focus on house painting, right? So I interned with that company, and I did really well. Again, I hate that, it's hard to find a balance between tooting your own horn and just telling your story or whatever. So I hope people know that I'm just telling the story, not trying to toot a horn. But I had like the most efficient business in the company, and I was like, oh, this is great. And they're like, we want you to be an executive and run other painting companies like throughout the Midwest. So then they promoted to executive, and I like ran my own business still, but also managed like 5 other people running their own businesses throughout the Midwest. And that internship pushed me in so many different ways to where I was super uncomfortable, but like uncomfortable in a good way, right? Like uncomfortable about things I should not have been uncomfortable, and it made me push my boundaries. And I would say that internship, honestly, the couple years in that internship is like what really pushed me to feel like I could take the next step and be successful, and also fixed a lot of the things that if I had not, like marketing was always an Achilles heel for me. Like I hated telling my story, and I hated being like, tooting my own horn, and also being like, you need this product, and then you find out it's not always like that. Like, there's definitely companies that do that, but like I think the successful companies are ones that are not like trying to shove something down your throat, but they're like, we want to be there for you because we know what you need, that you need this, and we know that we can help you be much better off down the line by helping you in this way. So they really helped me form like a bunch of skills like that. And so I was like, okay, I want to do this for my own. That's when, I loved the racing industry at the time. I was super involved in triathlon and running myself. And I had a friend that ran the Terre Haute Triathlon in Terre Haute, and he didn't want to do it anymore. And he's like, will someone take this over? And I was like, I think I can make that a business. And that started Crossroads Events and my first venture.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so first venture, Crossroads Events, and then you go into another venture and another venture and another venture. I mean, I speak with entrepreneurs all the time that are overwhelmed with their one. Yeah. What was the push to go from, like we heard from 0 to 1, right? What's the push from 1 to 5? Where does that come from?
Question. One, if I could give people further advice and stuff like that, I would probably advise to not do that, if I'm being completely honest. Or like if you are, because what I found is I think when I started Crossroads Events, I was trying to grow a reputation, right? And I actually, I kind of had some bad conditions that were working for me. And, we can cut this from the interview if you would like, but actually Terre Haute had a giant scandal with like someone that was actually trying to be arrested by the FBI in athletic event management, exactly what I was doing. He basically robbed a lot of people. He like would set up these big races and say like, I'm gonna hold a 5K. I think one of them was, I was gonna hold a 5K in Pittsburgh and you're gonna end on the 50-yard Steelers line. And a bunch of people would sign up, and he would just take their money and run. And he was based out of Terre Haute, and he's from Terre Haute. And I didn't know that when I started my business. Sure. So I had a lot of people think I was that person. Like when I started. Yeah. So building, when you are brand new, I think, especially young, something very important you have to do is you have to like build your name up, right? And build your reputation. And that's really hard. And I think part of like, why didn't I go down this or why didn't I go down that is because I was building my reputation and I wasn't as full on busy like I wished I was. I wasn't swamped with events from Crossroads Events and everything else like that at the time. And I think that's when Marsupial popped up, and that's when Farm Fresh popped up. And a lot of those ideas, Marsupial was kind of my own invention, my own thought process, and I thought it went really well with Crossroads because we're selling to the same customers, but we're not competing against the business models. Like they were additive, they weren't taken away from each other. So that made sense. And honestly, Farm Fresh came from actually launch. Like several of the ventures and the people that I work with actually came from being involved in launch. And that is one of the reasons that I think a space like this, it needs to be cultivated and people need to be in there. Not necessarily because like the cost savings are great. Don't get me wrong. For like a subcontractor having meeting rooms and everything else like that with an office, like that's good and all. That's great. Mm-hmm. But like the real magic of a co-working space comes from having entrepreneurs in here and having them bump into each other and having them share ideas and having them share expertise and businesses just naturally get formed out of that because you have a lot of really motivated individuals and they, a lot of people think they can do everything great. And, I would like to say that there are some things I do really well, but I'm also, I think, a good jack of all trades. Mm-hmm. Know how to do everything but master none. But sure. Not quite to that extent, but I think I'm a pretty good jack of all trades. And I think you run into people that are masters in their trade in a co-work space like this, in that if you can combine the right combination of individuals, you can really make some success happen. Yeah. So I think, that's kind of where I started growing from one beyond is I have 1,000 ideas. I have like an idea book that I just write everything down in because I don't want to forget it, or my inventions or anything else I come up with. I'm sketching it all out and writing out how would I make a business model out of this. And it just naturally happens. I can't really explain it. I see something. I think I want to help or want to fix things. Mm-hmm. And I think that's like part of my drive is I'm like, okay, there's a problem here. And I'm not a complainer. I don't want to complain about the problem. Like, how do we fix this problem? Yep. And I think that's kind of where a lot of these ventures stem from. Yeah. Yeah. I'll give you your check after the interview for the launch exposure there. Appreciate that. It's honest though. Like I'm not saying that because we're having this interview. Like me and Brian Jackson, when we formed Farm Fresh, we were sitting at the bar, tabletop that's over there, and I think he was growing hops because he wanted to sell hops for home brewers and stuff. And he's like, man, how am I going to sell this? And then we were talking about just local food, that is grown in the area. And I was like, man, how do you even know the quality or like what's out there and stuff like that? Like how does that even happen? How do you even know what the price is until you venture across town and go to a stand and see what's at that stand? Like, how do you know all this information? And he's like, I don't know. And then we're just like, there's got to be an app for that. There's an app for everything. Yeah. So then we did a bunch of research and there was nothing, or what was out there was extremely unuseful. And we're like, I can't believe this isn't out here. And we started brainstorming business ideas and everything else like that, and it went from there. So like, again, not to give launch a shout out, but that stuff just happens when you have entrepreneurs in a co-work space together. Mm-hmm. And even better, I've had a lot of help from entrepreneurs just because they're in the area, because you can, like I said, my Achilles heel was marketing, and we would have some awesome marketers in here, and I would just, instead of setting up a session and paying, whatever fees to consult and all this, I'd be like, hey, Rebecca, what would you do in this situation? Well, you should probably do this. That's an excellent idea. You know what I mean? It's just those types of connection, that type of help just happens when you have entrepreneurs, or even not everyone in here was an entrepreneur. Some are just awesome subcontractors that usually work from home, but they have an awesome skill set in something. Mm-hmm. And those things just happen when you have them all in the same space.
Totally agree, by the way. Yeah. Fully. Speaking of kind of marketing, because you probably had to do a little bit of this for your most recent venture, Barbotics. Yeah. Opening that in the middle of a global pandemic, starting January 2021, right? Was. Yeah, January 15th, 2021 was our first day open. So we were right in the thick of it. Tell me about that. How does that start? I think, when we had gotten started and stuff like that, Alec and I had met about 1 year before the doors opened. And so we met in like December of 2020 or 2019, and then 2020 was like a month later because of January. So anyways, we met like 1 year before we opened. And we started to get rolling on this and ideas and stuff like that. And March rolled around, the pandemic happened, right? And
our landlord, who is an awesome person. I mean, Kent is great, and he really does have our best interest at heart. But Kent was just like, guys, I don't think this is a good idea. He's like, this pandemic, he's like, I want you guys to be successful. The last thing I want to happen, he's like, I think it will be a while. And I was like, oh, it'll be a month. Here we're 2 years later.
Remember, hunker down for 6 weeks?
I know. Yeah. It'll be over so fast. But I'm a supreme optimist, and not so much on the other side. And sometimes that can be a little bit of a fault of mine. I am a supreme optimist. But you know what? We came at it, and I was like, you know, even if this does go on, it's going to take a long time for us to get open anyways, because like so many things need done. I was like, well, you know, I'm the type of person that would always, I think there is much more negative things that happen by saying later, we'll do it some other time, etc. And then it never gets done. You lose momentum, you lose motivation, you lose team motivation, your whole team members don't get behind it. Like if you don't have action like in your company, or especially in a startup, it's really easy. It's all about traction. Is a lot of startups. It's all about traction. However you do it at the beginning, you just have to keep building on that momentum until you can get to like a sustainable business model. Mm-hmm. And I've just seen traction lost time after time, and it is the most frustrating thing ever. It's happened to me several times in other ventures, and I knew how much I wanted to do this because I love Crossroads, and we do a lot of work locally in Crossroads, but we also do a lot of work that's not local. You know, we have a lot of clientele in Chicago, a lot of clientele in Indianapolis and beyond, and I love those clientele, but I really wanted to do something more local. And I and Alec as well, you know, he was 100% on board. You know, we have some differences of opinions, but he was always the same way. Like we would rather roll the dice and go through it. And I think, you know, one thing you learn as an entrepreneur is you have to set yourself up with a safety net. Like you want to plan for the best, but you also have to plan for what if the worst happens.
Sure.
So you want to fail fast. So before you're super invested in time, money, the whole 9 yards, like you want to fail fast if you're going to fail. And you want to fail at a low entry level. And I think we set ourselves up really well to do that. You know, with the leases, the type of leases that we signed with the landlord, the type of financing that we had going on, everything else like it, we knew that worst case scenario, we would still be successful. Even if our revenues were not near what we wanted, we would still be successful. So at that point, we were just like, let's do it. Like us putting this on the side for 5 months or 6 months or whatever and picking it up later, like the negative side effects of that is going to be much worse than moving forward with it. So I think that's kind of where the decision came, is we didn't know what the future held, but we knew that we wanted to do this, and more importantly, we were confident in our business model because, you know, we did surveys and everything else like that to see like what was lacking in the community, and we knew that entertainment was part of that. Mm-hmm. So we knew that if we brought a great part of entertainment and stuff like that, that it would still be accepted, and we were happy to see it very much was.
Yeah, so. Yeah, fantastic. And for those that maybe still are in quarantine from 2020, what is Barbotics? I mean, we mentioned a barcade, but like, tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, so Barbotics is, it's an arcade bar, and what that means is, you know, it's an establishment for only 21 and over. We do sell alcohol and alcoholic beverages. If you do come, of course, you don't have to do any of that at all. So we have mocktails, which are non-alcoholic beverages, and we also have, you know, you don't have to drink it all if you don't want to. You know, you can get a pop, you can get a water, you know, whatever you want. But if I were to summarize like what Barbotics is, it's a place and an atmosphere to where you are free to be yourself, and you're free to have fun, and you're free to do activities with you and your friends that are not just sitting around and drinking or something like that. And not, you know, it's fun to hang out at a bar and talk to your friends and stuff like that, but it's a lot of fun to have like fun experiences with them as well while you're there. So it's a place that allows you to not only do that, but also to be like super creative and be able to, you know, not only are our cocktails super creative, I would argue we have some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, you do.
But we also have like a lot of fun things to do. Not only can you play games, but now, you know, we've seen that the market is asking more for more social games than more individualistic or just duo games, which is some of the arcade games that are there, like, Miss Pac-Man, stuff like that. You can play 2-player and stuff like that, but how do you play with a group? So like those games are really fun and still great to be involved in, but we've moved more towards social games that are games of 4, 5, 6 and stuff like that you can play together. And it's just a place for you to have a great time with your friends, family, etc. A perfect date night location. And it's a way for you to be able to just do something unique and fun that you just don't see anywhere else.
Perfect date night. Destroy your significant other in skee-ball. Yes.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of husbands pretty sulky after their wives spank them in skee-ball or Miss Pac-Man. Yeah.
That would scare me a little bit, not gonna lie. So what was the hardest part about opening Barbotics? Like, what was the roughest part, or when did you think we may not be able to do this, or did you think that?
Yeah, no, to be honest, I never thought we weren't going to be able to do this. Financing worried me just for a hot second at the beginning, because originally what the plan was with the landlord is that he was going to pay for our whole build-out costs and build it into our rent. So that greatly reduced our startup costs, right? But then when the pandemic happened, everyone's stocks went. So all the money he was going to use for the build-out and stuff that he had saved up to renovate and include in his business model to make more money in the future, it just, not that it hasn't come back up at the time, it just all tanked. And he's like, I hate to do this to you guys, but I literally can't do it anymore. Yeah. Stocks are horrible for everyone right now. And that's where I was going to pull the money to renovate the space. And, that was the first big wall. And we're like, okay, well, how do we come up with the startup costs we need for this place? And, luckily me and Alec worked with some financial institutions, and we had to put up just about everything we own as collateral, but we got the financing done. So that was the first one where I was like, woo, putting up the house and the truck. That sounds great. But, it ended up working out fine. And through financing, I didn't know Alec when we started this venture. I heard he was going to do the same thing, and we met. Mm-hmm. And I think what was great is, even though he had a lot of bar and restaurant experience and I had business experience, but not necessarily business in restaurant or bar experience. But I think that we had such complementing skill sets and stuff like that I could let Alec do his own thing and trust that it was going to be great. And I could do my own thing and do all the research and make sure it was going to be great. And as long as our vision was shared, everything was going to be fine. Mm-hmm. So I really never had a question whether it was going to open. I think you're always nervous when you first open on how successful it's going to be or not. You can do everything you want to prepare, and some businesses are just so fickle, and sometimes people are so fickle. Is you prepare and you prepare and you prepare. But I don't know if there's an entrepreneur or a business owner out there that's not a little nervous, when they go to open.
Sure.
Luckily, everything went great. I would say the only other, thing that we came across is when we first opened, and I think, I've learned in the restaurant and the bar industry that it's like this across the board. So when you first open, everyone in the world wants to come. You know what I mean? You're brand new, you're the hot thing on the market, etc. Everybody wants to come check it out. Mm. And that's great. And that's great for that business. But then you find out, as everyone goes and stuff like that, okay, they've had a great time the first time. How do we turn them into a repeat customer? And how do we turn them into a loyal customer that comes back? And I think most businesses across the board, I don't want to even say most, I would say probably every business that is in the industry across the board, they go through a plateau period to where, everything was amazing and now you've hit your plateau. And the trick is to make sure that when you've hit your plateau, you're at a plateau that's financially successful. Because sometimes people are really hot out the gate, but when it's a business model that doesn't create a repeat customer, it doesn't create a loyal customer. Mm. So therefore, when you hit your plateau, it's a not financially feasible one. So you have to make sure that when you build those customers up, so you're at one. And we've been very lucky to have wonderful customers that love what we have going on and love our offerings. So we've been able to create that. But I think, that's a little scary for every business owner, is how do you create that and how do you grow that? So we created it, and, we're financially successful at that plateau, but so now that we're there, how do we bump that up? How do we create more loyal customers? How do we create more repeat customers and stuff like that? And I would say the last 4 months, that's what me and Alec have really been working on is, okay, these customers are never leaving. They love us. Now, how do we bring in others that are the exact same way without deterring our current clientele? And we've learned a lot of great, interesting lessons on that, but that's kind of what we've been working on. That's kind of where we went. Yeah, so those are probably like the two things that we've ran into that have made us a little nervous, and kind of how we've gotten over them and gotten around them.
Yeah. I can imagine putting up the house and truck was probably a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah, a little bit.
So what's your biggest surprise? Was there a big surprise that, through owning Barbotics, just planning everything, what was something that you weren't really expecting that happened, good or bad?
Good or bad? Well, let's go to the bad first, and then we can go to the good, because it's good to end on a high note, right?
Yes, it is.
I think some of the things I wasn't expecting is just how, I knew you were going to have to figure things out, and I guess I was even prepared to, everything goes wrong. You know what I mean? Like, things are going to go wrong. There's no getting around that. Same things happened with us. Like, we bought, thank goodness, a used like refrigeration unit and stuff like that. And the guy we bought it off of wasn't, it's not like he was a legitimate
You didn't get it
company.
from the vendor.
Yeah, we didn't get it from a vendor.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, this runs off 220 and all this other stuff. And I was like, really? I was like, looks like it'd be like running off 110 electricity, know?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I hooked a 110 plug up to it, but like I know it's 220. And he's like, I only did that so we could test it real quick. And he tested it and it cut out real quick because it flipped a breaker. And he's like, see, it's 220 because it flipped the breaker so much. And I didn't do as much research on the products we were bringing in because we had a million other things to do. And I just believed him. I was like, okay, I can rewire a 220 plug. Maybe I shouldn't be saying this on video, but I was like, I can rewire a 220 plug, or if I can't, my dad can. He's really good at just figuring things out. So we wire it up, plug it into 220, and boom, just melt it.
Fried it.
It fried it. And I was, why didn't I do my research more and everything else like that? And, we ran into a couple, and luckily that wasn't the space. All that happened, we were testing it at my parents' house and everything else like that far away. And, we would just run into a couple things like that here and there. That was kind of, they're all just roadblocks, right? And I think some people see roadblocks and they just freak out. But I will say, and I think I learned a lot of this from Crossroads events, is like in the event industry, like a lot of times you're working outside, a lot of times you're working with volunteers, you're just working with so many moving parts that are different all the time.
And very literally working with roadblocks.
Very literally working with roadblocks. And very literally sometimes working with roadblocks that motorists just run over. So it's just, things are so ever changing in the event industry that you're just prepared for it. You just accept that we can prepare and make this plan as great as we can, but we already have 3 backup plans in place. So we were kind of prepared for that. And I think some people freak out when things go wrong, but I think as a business owner and stuff like that, you should just be prepared for it. And just accept the fact from the get-go it's not going to work like you think it's going to work. And you're going to have to change things and stuff like that. And I think if you go in with that mindset, then everything's going to be all right. You just have to find your way around it. So I would say we ran into just the same as all other business owners, kind of the same thing, getting started. But one of the, a ton of good things have come out of this, but like probably my favorite thing is Crossroads and some of the other businesses that I've worked with before Barbotics has been B2B. So like we're working with other business customers. And don't get me wrong, our customers love us and adore us, but there's fewer, right? Like usually B2B customers have less touch points than like a retail location.
They're not doing an event every other day or anything.
Yeah. So like, yes, our customers love us, but maybe like 50 customers love us. But it was just cool at Barbotics to see so many people come in that like fell in love with the space and fell in love with Barbotics. And like, it was just cool that, you know, can I buy a shirt? I want to wear your logo. Nobody's ever bought a Crossroads shirt. You know what I mean? Like it was just really cool to see people so excited about it and having such a good time and like wanting to be your spokesperson. Like we had people coming out of the woodwork that just loved our space so much they wanted to help us or work with us in whatever way. And you know, there wasn't a lot of room to, you know, have everyone help us by any means, but some of them did. You know, we've got some great people helping us with marketing that came from like the space, and we've had just events that we wanted to host that we were so busy that me and Alec couldn't host anymore. And we've got an awesome guy hosting trivia that would come to our trivias and loved the trivia and stuff like that. And he's like, you don't even have to pay me. And we do pay him. I was like, no, we have to pay you.
Yeah, we like legally we have to pay you.
Literally have to pay you. I was like, no, and we like love that you want to be involved. And we just have so many people that want to be involved. And we're just happy that this has been a cool atmosphere to create. Mm-hmm. And I would say that's a cool thing that's come from it.
Yeah, a tribe, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You've got people that are invested in the business besides yourself, which is definitely cool to see. So.
I think that like comes down to too is like so many people want to be, I don't want to say generic, but a lot of people want to play it very safe, right? Like I think a lot of business owners want to play what they deem as safe, and I get that from some point because like you know you don't want to try something so risky that you have a risk of it completely failing, right? If you've totally missed the mark. But so I get that, and I've done that. But I think like Barbotics has allowed ourselves to not do that, and we've allowed ourselves to be geeky, and we've allowed ourselves to be fun, and we've allowed ourselves to be very different and unique. Mm-hmm. And luckily, I think that's what people fall in love with businesses and stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of places, and I don't look at me, I'm not exactly a designer clothing wise, but I think like, you know, if we were to jump into that segment, I think like the clothing brands or boutiques or other things like that are successful, you know, and this goes across industries, they allow themselves to do the same thing. Like you can go buy plain shirts and plain pants and stuff like that from any place, but can you buy from a place like a local boutique or something like that that completely puts together a whole ensemble and stuff like that for an individual and allows them to be unique and different and stuff like that. And I think that can be a dangerous move because you have to hit the mark, but at the same time it can have such a big payoff because that's what people fall in love with. They fall in love with the uniqueness and the different. Nobody falls in love with something that's everywhere. Mm-hmm. So I shouldn't say nobody, but
I would agree though. I think people can like things that are everywhere, right?
Yeah, that's good.
No one falls in love with the ordinary, right?
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think you hit it on the mark. Barbotics isn't for everyone, right? Yeah. And it wasn't designed to be for everyone. You know, I don't think you would close your doors to anyone, but when you walk in, it's a very specific atmosphere that some people will love and some people won't, and that's okay, right? Yeah. And I think that's cool. I've got one more, maybe two more questions, depending on how far we go. But Ethan, what keeps you up at night?
Oh, what keeps me up at night? Honestly, future endeavors. Mm-hmm. Future endeavors is what keeps me up at night. To be completely honest, like I know some operations of the business or something else like that might keep people up at night, but I really don't have any operational worries about anything I'm involved in, and I'm most heavily involved in Crossroads. I'm most heavily involved in Barbotics. Like those are the two. You know, like I'm obviously active in other things, but those are the main ones. And I think, you know, not that I'm wise by any means, but I think if I've taken in everything that I've been involved with, me and Alec, and we've really invested in like our systems and stuff like that. So our systems allow us to really do a lot of work and make sure it's done right. and our protocols and stuff like that. And then our people, you know, we honestly have great people that work at Barbotics. We really do. We have an awesome staff, great people. They're awesome to our customers. I don't know if I've ever gotten a complaint. I don't think we've ever gotten a complaint from anyone that like, your staff was rude or your staff was this. And you know, that happens in every, you know, like restaurant industry, and we've never had that. And so we have really great staff. That doesn't keep me up at night. I don't have to worry about my staff. And Alec has done a great job of training them and bringing them in and making sure that, you know, in Crossroads, I've also run into the issue of, okay, I have staff, but how high do I set those expectations? You know, sometimes I've set expectations too low and they're like, oh, I didn't get this done. I'm like, oh, that's okay. And then it becomes a repeat process and repeat nature, and you're fighting it forever. So we have awesome staff that's not like that. So that doesn't keep me up. Operational things don't keep me up. We've built a lot of great systems and algorithms that track. You know, not to toot my own horn, I'm probably nowhere near as great as a lot of people out there, but I'm pretty good at Excel and building systems through Excel. So we have a lot of algorithms and systems built through that track our inventory and tell where it should be, and when inventory is counted, it drops a certain measure, boom, it orders, you know, this product and all that stuff. So, but what keeps me up at night is not current operations, but it's like future endeavors. Like, how do we either grow a venture, or how do we prepare for too much growth and stuff like that? So like, that's kind of like what I've been seeing in Crossroads is Barbotics is great. And I think we have an awesome team set up with Barbotics, and it's mostly me and Crossroads. I do have subcontractors and part-time employees that help me out and stuff like that. But before the pandemic, we were seeing so much growth. It was almost luckily we did a great job and we didn't have any problem with customers, but we could have, and we hired on some full-time people to help make sure that happened. And then the pandemic happened. But now, as we're moving out of the pandemic, we're starting to see that growth again. So it's like, okay, how do we prepare for too much growth and stuff like that? Because you love your customers, or at least you should, and you don't want them to have a bad experience. You want them to have the same awesome experience they've always had. But you also can't spread yourself too thin. But it's also, I think that's a hard point in a business, is when you grow so much that you have to bring on another round of individuals, because you have to be so profitable that you can afford those individuals. So you're like playing a line as, okay, I think we're gonna have enough business that we can bring on these full-time people to take care of it. So that, and then like I said, just future endeavors. I wish I could shut my brain off and be like, this is all I'm doing. And I had to force myself to do that. Like, okay, man, look at what all we have on the plate. Like, don't even think about something else. Like,
stop it.
Like, burn that notebook. There's no time for anything else. But, you know, I love the uniqueness, and this is going to sound so hippie of me, but I love the uniqueness of the world, and I love the uniqueness of people, and I love the uniqueness of different business models and how they help people, or how they bring something different, differentiated to an area. And when I'm a big traveler, and when I travel and I go see those things, I'm just like, oh my gosh, how could we bring this to us? You know, how could we do this in Terre Haute? How could we do something different? And how could we flip the script on it? And that keeps me up at night, because I don't want to not do it, but I know I can't do it, but I can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It sounds like you need like a space in the Terre Haute area where you could come and talk to other entrepreneurs about these ideas.
Yeah.
They should make one of those.
Yeah, they should make one of those.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
It'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I think the dream job would be to, you know, someday in the future, be out of my ventures and, you know, not a venture capitalist, but someone that can work with a bunch of different ventures and be almost like the guidance and the financer and like the person that helps these people be prepared to be successful and be involved in a lot, but not be so involved that you can't help others.
Yeah.
If I could somehow in the far future find a way to do that, I think that would be the dream job.
I will mention, just because it is very much what you talked about, the Indiana Small Business Development Center. We do that with a lot of our businesses, and a lot of our advisors are previous business owners and multiple business owners and things. So maybe in the future, an advisement position with the ISBDC could be there.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. Just a thought.
Yeah.
So I know we're running pretty close on time. We got about 5 minutes left. Okay. What else would you like to add? Is there anything that I didn't ask you, or any advice that you'd like to give to potential new entrepreneurs? You've got the launch audience. So what would you like to add?
I'd say do. It's a double-edged sword. I'm going to give you some advice and almost take it back. So, be prepared. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people have a great idea. There's ideas are a dime a dozen. I know everyone's like, I've got the next $1 million idea. Well, that's great. But again, an idea is a dime a dozen. So I would say, build your plan and make sure it's a feasible plan. Like some people don't even think they have I don't even know an example off the top of my head to throw out there, but they think they have an awesome idea and they're like, I'll just sell a bunch of this. Who's going to manufacture it? I don't know. There's a way to manufacture it, I'm sure. Oh, okay. Well, who's gonna be the one selling it? Oh, I figure I'll do that. But I thought you were focused on all the other parts of the business. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm gonna do all that too. You know what I mean? So you have to build a plan, a smart plan at the beginning on how you're gonna do it, and you have to even see if the product's feasible and stuff like that. I've had that problem before too. Is people will buy it for this price point. What makes you think that? That's reasonable. Why do you think that's reasonable?
I will buy it for that price point, so everyone else will.
Yeah. So I think you have to make sure your product's feasible. You have to make sure that your team, that's one thing I've really learned with Barbotics that I think is like a great lesson is, I know it's only me and Alec, but I think we make a really great team. Mm-hmm. And he does his part of the business superbly well, and I think I do a pretty good job on my side too. And finding people, a business has to be fantastic, I think, nowadays to be successful. There's so many businesses out there, and there's so many larger businesses that have conglomerated to make something that might be a little more generic. You know what I mean? It's generic. So you as a small business owner or a startup can't be generic. Mm-hmm. You will not be successful in being generic. You will get run over by all the big guys in the marketplace. So you have to be really unique, and you have to be really good. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why what I've really learned from Barbotics is you need to assemble a team that allows you to do each part really, really good. Even if that means giving up equity to all those people. Because you can have 100% of a business that gets ran over and doesn't do anything. Okay, you own 100% of it. That's great.
100% of nothing is still nothing. 100% of nothing
is nothing, yeah. Or you could form a team of 4 and everyone excellent. You can have an awesome operations and financial person, an awesome marketer, an awesome HR, and another part of the business, and you can each do an amazing part of that business, and you can own 25% of an amazing company that does really well. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, pick what you think is the best path for you, but I would say that surrounding yourself with an awesome team, being prepared, and then also building systems that's something that I learned a lot from, honestly, Devin and Deshaun, who've been in launch and that I'm involved in with Jam, is like being prepared for what happens if things don't work out, or to make sure someone stays motivated. Because I've been in some ventures where people, a business partner becomes unmotivated. Maybe something's changed in their life. Maybe something's going on, and they just can no longer commit any of the time that they originally promised to it. Okay, well, that stinks, and I feel bad for that person too, but that, we can't wreck the whole business over that, as heartless as that might seem, but we ruin a bunch of people's lives if we wreck the whole business. So how do we, if someone becomes unmotivated or their life changes or something else like that, what systems do you build into a business to make sure that either that person, one, is very motivated to not be lazy or drop the ball on things, mm-hmm. or two, if things change in life, how does this thing still exist? And I've built oh my goodness, I'm blanking on the name. I'll have to rethink of it and tell you later. But basically, you earn your way into the business. and stuff like that. So everyone starts with nothing, and you earn your way in. And if part way through, you can't do it anymore, then, you end at that percentage, and you've done your work to get the business to that place, but now it's time for someone else to take the rest of it. So just building all these systems and having smart systems in place to keep people motivated and keep the wheels turning and stuff like that. I would say just doing all that work from the get-go. And then with all that being said, also be prepared for some of that stuff not to work on, and you have a choice at that point to quit. And sometimes, quitting sounds really bad, but sometimes that's the right way to go. Like, I've been in a venture to where I was chasing a patent and chasing a patent and chasing a patent. And even the lawyer was like, at this point, I don't know if it's wise to keep chasing it. Oh, we'll get it. Chasing the patent, chasing the patent. And you get 5 years down the road and you don't have the patent, and you've spent more money than you should have. And now you kill it when you should have killed it from the beginning. So I'm not saying failure is not, I think some people are so nervous about failing. And you shouldn't be nervous about failing. It happens to everybody, and it's okay, and that's how you learn and take the next step. But you can either choose to quit, or you can choose to push on and keep believing in yourself and believing in your venture. And I think being resilient is incredibly important as an entrepreneur and stuff like that, because there's going to be highs and there's going to be lows. And if you're not able to make it through the lows and twist the script and go a different way or whatever, then you're going to lose. And I think a lot of people are so sold on what their original vision is that they're not able to change. They're like, this has to be the way. It's almost selfish, honestly, and in a sense, is like, I have to do it this way, and no one else's opinion's right but mine. And I mean, if you're selling to yourself, great. But if you're selling to the consumers, or other clientele, I would listen to them. So, I would say that those would be my last pieces of advice.
Yeah. So build a strong team, build a fantastic team, plan for them to leave, right? Or at least have a plan.
Yeah, have a plan and make sure that they stay motivated. I think motivation and commitment at the beginning is a really hard part. And if you build in reasons that if they're not unmotivated and they're not doing the work to get them out of there so you can get someone in, even if you never have to use that, having that tool in place so that they know that's a possibility keeps people motivated. Sure. So I just think just being prepared for that.
Sure.
Is wise.
I love it. Well, Ethan, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Again, this is Ethan Page from Barbotics et al., multiple other businesses. And I was Jared L. with Launch Terre Haute. Thank you very much.
Cool.